the economy is in free fall. He has to borrow even more money and barely scrapes through. August 1875. Against all odds, Carnegie's giant furnaces are ready to test. Steel production is phenomenally dangerous. Inside, 5 tons of molten metal. 3,000 degrees. Hot enough to vaporize a man in seconds. If it works, it will make Carnegie one of the richest men in the world. But there's a lot more at stake. Skyscrapers, cars, washing machines, aeroplanes, even space travel. None of it can happen if steel can't be mass-produced. It's a success. Carnegie is the first ever to mass-produce steel. Prices plummet by over 80%. Output rockets from a few thousand tons in 1860 to 11 million by 1900.
So many American stories of success are diligence, perseverance. There's an awful lot of luck involved, too.
His timing couldn't have been better. It was steel that built American cities. It was steel that built American railroads. It was steel that built American shipping. By the beginning of the 20th century, he was one of the wealthiest men in America.
Pittsburgh transforms from a sleepy town to the industrial heart of the nation. Its population triples. Driven by a new steel railroad, millions of tons of steel are transported across America, the raw material to build the modern city. And the grandest of all is New York. It's an era of obscene opulence. New York is a playground for super-rich industrialists and financiers. Wildly extravagant, they smoke cigars rolled in $100 bills. Their wives' hats studded with diamonds. This is the Gilded Age. Land values are the highest in the world. There's only one place to go: up. By 1902, 65 skyscrapers are being constructed in Manhattan. This is one of them. It's called walking the steel. This man is 30 stories above the street. His first time at this height. No harness or safety rope. One slip, and he's dead. Veterans are called fixers. The novices are snakes, because working with them can be deadly. The old hands know just how dangerous it can be.
Thing I hate worse than poison is to take on a new man when we're near the top. They all get used to it or get killed.
No hard hats, just a 280-foot drop. A sudden gust of wind, and it's all over. They're up here 8 hours a day. Meals when they can. No bathroom breaks. They're called roughnecks, European immigrants and Mohawk Indians. Many were sailors and bridge workers, so they're used to heights.
The guy's balancing on the beams. I think it took a lot of bravery. I think it took a lot of skill, a lot of physically challenging. But I also think you had to be a little crazy.
The stakes couldn't be higher. It's a risk they are willing to take. The pay is $4 a day, twice the going rate for manual labor. Foreman William Starrett sums up his dangerous job.
Building skyscrapers is the nearest peacetime equivalent of war. Even to the occasional grim reality of an accident or a maimed body, even death, remind us that we are fighting a war of construction against the forces of nature.
He makes it. Many aren't so lucky. 2 roughnecks out of 5 die or are disabled on the job.
Whether it's a builder or an architect or whatever, whoever had the imagination to design and build some of the great structures of New York, I'm inspired by.
In 1902, in New York, this is what the future looks like. The Flatiron Building. Its triangular footprint determined by the intersection of 3 streets, not 2. The steel frame means the outside can be hung in sections like a suit of clothes. Now the walls don't take the weight, the steel does. It's so radical, when people first see it, they think it will blow over and kill them. A lawsuit is filed claiming winds focused by the Flatiron's extreme shape damage a nearby shop. Today, it's one of our best-loved buildings. Inside, the other breakthrough that lets towers rise into the clouds, the elevator. Before it, the tallest buildings stop mostly at 5 floors. No more walking upstairs now, so the sky's the limit. For the first time, the higher the floor, the higher the rent.
You think it's a fairly humble invention, but when Otis invented the first really safe elevator, it enabled the growth of the modern city where people could come in, build much taller buildings, get a much higher density of people.
And sure enough, by the end of the 19th century, the urban population has increased 87 times over. In Chicago alone, in just 10 years, they build 50 steel frame buildings. And in 20 years, its population more than doubles to almost 1.7 million. American cities are exploding. But for many, living in the shadow of these new towers will prove even harder than building them. In America in 1890, crime and poverty are rife on the streets. But these mavericks are about to make a difference. Gangsters, murderers, thieves, and fear are on the streets. New tabloid newspapers splash crime all over the front pages. In Chicago, you can rent a gun by the hour. In the Sears catalog, you can buy one for $12. In New York, a policeman finds a list on a murdered gangster. His rate card. Punches, $2. Nose and jaw broke, $10. Ear chewed off, $15. The big job, $100 and up. Detective Bureau Chief Thomas Burns, a man who follows his own set of rules. He's shrewd. And he's very tough. Among his methods is a technique his detectives call the third degree. First degree, persuasion. Second degree, intimidation. Third degree, pain. In 4 years, Burns claims he's arrested 3,300 criminals. He solved the biggest heist of the 19th century, nearly a $3 million Manhattan bank robbery. Reporters call him the greatest crime buster in the history of the New York City police force.
His very manner, the size of him, his menacing shoulders and arms, the bark of his voice.
Pickpockets, forgers, whoever cracked a safe, unscrupulous rogues.
Crooks are now afraid of their shadows.
They lead double lives.
But tracking down criminals isn't easy. There's no official ID, no birth certificates or driver's licenses. If a criminal is known in one town, he just moves to the next. Criminals are anonymous. Burns is tackling this problem head-on and bringing police work into a new age. This is his rogues gallery. Mugshots of 7,000 known lawbreakers. Using photography to identify criminals will change detective work forever.
Annie Riley, alias Little Annie. Deceitful servant.
The mugshots are distributed to police departments around the country. But these are more than just pictures. Burns is also building psychological profiles of criminals.
Rufus Minor. He comes from a very good family. It's a pity he's a thief.
This is the first attempt to create a national crime register.
A city as diverse as ours is going to have a significant crime problem that you've got to be on top of.
Even today, mugshots still catch criminals. 12 million are taken every year nationwide. That's more than the entire population of Ohio. And it all began with the Rogues Gallery over 120 years ago.
Any questions?
But crime isn't the only problem plaguing urban streets. In many cities, slums are reaching epidemic proportions. Multiple families crammed into one small room. Human waste pours into the streets, alleys, and open courtyards.
People were crowded in. There were windowless tenements. Sometimes you had no internal plumbing, just privies in the basement, in the backyard. And the Lower East Side during these years was the single most crowded place in the entire world.
Jacob Rees, Danish immigrant, crime reporter, photographer. He gets leads for stories from Chief Inspector Burns. Now, he's about to expose the hell of tenements. Jacob Rees knows what it's like to be poor. 15 years ago, he lost his job in a stock market crash. It's midnight, but Rees has a new technology that will change the public perception of poverty forever. An explosive powder that produces enough light to photograph in the dark. This is one of the first ever photographs of slum life.
Go.
It shocks millions.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jacob A. Rees.